Do you want to combine gemstones in your projects but you're not quite sure where to start? Well, I'm currently making this 3-strand bracelet and I thought I'd show you the process of putting the gems together. It's not always easy to explain, so I'll take you step by step through the process. And if you want to see more techniques and tutorials like this one, hit that subscribe button. Now let's design some chain. I looked through my bead stash and decided I want to use these gemstones. I've got green coated pyrite for a pop of colour, coloured nugget pearls to provide an interesting shape, moonstone, I'm going to use the white ones, which I like adding to brighten up the mix, and smoky quartz for a bit of neutral colour for the mix. I've chosen quite small beads as the 3 strands will be quite close together and I want the chain to look fairly delicate. And I picked them by just putting them next to each other and deciding the mix that I like. The bracelet I'm designing has 3 strands of chain and 2 connectors. And if you want more details on how to make these, I'll link the tutorial in a card above. I'm going to close it with a hook clasp. So the chains will be going between the 2 connectors and then come together at the ends. So there are a few constraints for the design. In the centre section, the chains need to be of equal length, and then on the outer sections, the outside lengths of chain need to be slightly longer to allow for the taper. The ends of these chains also need to sit together with the taper. To keep the lengths about even, I'm going to try to use the same number of each gem in each strand. I'm going to assume the pyrite and the smoky quartz are about the same size, so they're interchangeable. These will be linked together with wrap loops, so I can adjust the size of these a bit to compensate for very small differences in length. If you have larger differences, you could also use jump rings to even up the strands. To get the length I want, I'm going to try 5 beads for each strand in each section. The other rule I want to follow is not to have the same gemstone side by side, and to try to make it look random. So I'm going to use an imaginary 5x3 grid and start placing the gemstones. And I'll start with the pearls because they're the largest. I think I'll just use 1 pearl for each strand. So with this being the centre section, I think I'll keep them away from the ends to provide a bit of balance. I can then just start filling in the grid. I think I'll use 1 pyrite there, a smoky quartz at the end, and then another smoky quartz and perhaps the moonstone at the other end. Then I can put a moonstone in the top centre and perhaps second on the bottom. And then another pyrite will fit in there. And at the top. But then if I need a smoky quartz, they'll be next to each other. So if I move that pyrite across, I'll pop a smoky quartz in, and then we can do a smoky quartz at the bottom and pyrite at the top. And then another pyrite at the opposite end. I think that looks okay, so let's move on to the left-hand side. And this time I think I'll put a pearl in at the end at the top. Now looking at what I've got basically next to it before the connector, I think I'll put a moonstone in and then a pyrite there and a smoky quartz. I have a smoky quartz at the bottom there. And I'm really just feeling my way through at the moment, just making sure 2 of the same beads aren't sitting next to each other, either horizontally or vertically. Now I need a pearl at the bottom, so I'll pop that in. And I know I want small beads right at the end, so let's fit the pyrite and the smoky quartz in like that. Now I'm quite happy with how that looks, and I've got some decent combinations there, so I can just mirror them on the right hand side. Except if I mirror that centre strand, I'm going to have 2 moonstone next to each other. So let's move that strand up, then just follow the sequence along. Now I think I'll put the pearl next to the connector at the bottom this time. So that means the bottom strand from the left-hand side will be in the middle on the right-hand side, and the top strand on the left-hand side will be at the bottom on the right-hand side. But then we've got a small problem. that we've got two smoky quartz next to each other. So let's just swap the pyrite and smoky quartz around. Now we've got a chance to look at the layout and decide if we like it. I'm fairly happy, but we've got those 3 moonstones that are in a bit of a diagonal row. So if I swap around the pearl and the moonstone on that central strand, then I've got a diagonal row of the pearls, which are actually a bit more obvious. Let's put that back again. How about if I swap that smoky quartz and the moonstone? That'll work quite nicely. Because the pearls are irregular shapes, I'm just going to check where the drill holes are and what shapes they might make. And then I can swap them around in the chain if I want to as well. Okay, so I'm happy with that layout and I'm ready to start putting the beads together. I've put the beads together using wrapped loop links. I'm not going to go into detail in this video about this, but I do have another video on wrapped loops. If you need a refresher, I'll link it up in a card above. I've put all of the chains together, and you'll notice that I've left the loops on the middle chain open. That's because my connector has closed loops in the middle, so I'll need to attach them and then close that loop. But before I do that, I want to check the lengths of the chain, and I can use some scrap wire for this. So I'll just thread a scrap of wire through all 3 loops on one side, and then all 3 loops on the other side as well. I can then put a bit of tension on the chains to see if they're all the same length. And actually that middle chain is a little bit longer, and it's not a lot, so I should just be able to make those end loops a little bit smaller to fix it. You can also check this by just using wire on one end and letting the chains dangle and seeing if the loops line up. Unfortunately, it's not very easy to show you on an overhead camera. And we can do the same tricks with the end chains and just bring the 3 chains together where they'll be going into the clasp. And actually these chains all look pretty good. So once I'm happy with the length of all the chains, I can attach them to the connectors and make up the bracelet. And here's my bead arrangement and how that looks in the finished bracelet. For the full bracelet tutorial, you can get to the video here, and you can subscribe to my channel and head over to my website for more hints, tips and projects. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.